The music you are listening to may be heard on the streets of Mexico during a holiday known as the Day of the Dead. What are some holidays children enjoy in the United States, and how do they compare to holidays in Mexico? This podcast details 3 holidays celebrated in our neighbor to the south, Mexico. Students listening to this podcast may create a chart where they list 3 important holidays in the United States, including a few main details about each holiday. During the podcast, they could list the 3 Mexican holidays and the main ideas about each of them. Afterwards, the teacher may explain that holidays are part of the cultural geography of a society and ask the students to make conclusions about the similarities and differences of the United States and Mexican holidays. This podcast addresses the Minnesota Geography Standards for Grade 4, Code 4.3.2.3.1, and Grade 8, Code 8.3.2.3.1. You are listening to a podcast created by the Minnesota Alliance for Geographic Education. Our mission is to help you understand your world better through geography. Our presenter is Kari Kunze Hogue, a master Spanish teacher at Mounds Park Academy in St. Paul. I am Fred Kunze, a member of the Minnesota Alliance for Geographic Education.
There are other things that children in Mexico look forward to. Holidays, just like kids in the United States do. Today I'm going to talk about 3 main ones. The first is the Dia de los Tres Reyes, or the Day of the Three Kings. It's related to the American Christmas celebration, but it's on the 6th of January. What happens is the 5th at night, the kids will leave their shoes out, and they're waiting for toys and treats and candies to be in their shoes in the morning on the 6th. This is to honor the fact that in Roman Catholic tradition, the 3 kings brought gifts, the wise men brought gifts to the baby Jesus. Another thing that children look forward to is the 16 and 15 de septiembre, the 15th and 16th of September. The 16th of September is actually Mexican Independence Day. A lot of Americans think that it is the Cinco de Mayo or the 5th of May, but that's not actually a very big celebration in Mexico. It's a much bigger celebration in the United States. The 5th of May is the day that the Mexicans kicked the French out of Puebla. The French had been ruling them for a time being. And it's not celebrated. It'd be like celebrating the Battle of the Bulge in the United States. The 16th of September is the actual Mexican Independence Day. This is an important holiday because it's the day that Mexico actually gained its independence. On the 15th of September during the night, the president of the country or the mayors of different small towns will come out into a balcony of the main government building and reenact a speech that was given in Guadalajara. The speech is called the Grito de Dolores, and in this speech they will call for liberty and food for everyone, and the Mexicans will respond with a rousing Viva Mexico, Viva Mexico, Viva Mexico. And that's the actual cultural part of it, but there are some other little associations that happen too that are fun for kids. For instance, you'll see people walking around in the crowds outside waiting for the grito, and they will sell paper mache eggs. And in the paper mache eggs, there might be confetti or flour, and you can throw those at people. They kind of explode on them. It's a fun night. Lastly, of course, is the Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. The Day of the Dead is celebrated on November 1st and November 2nd. Similar to the Day of Independence Day, in which a lot of Americans get the date confused, many Americans think this is something to do with Halloween, but really it's not anything to do with it at all. It might have more to do with the Christian All Saints Day or All Souls Day. However, the tradition is really more syncretic in that it comes from the old pure pecho or indigenous traditions mixed with the Roman Catholic traditions. When the Spaniards came to the New World, they found a group of indigenous people called the pure pecho, or who they mistakenly called the Tarasca Indians. And this group was celebrating the return of their dead ancestors. And now it's interesting that it happens on November 1st, and there's a nice tie to Minnesota on this one. Around this time of the year, a lot of the monarch butterflies from the northern parts of the United States return down to Michoacan in Mexico. And the pure pecha associated different cardinal points in the compass, north, south, east, and west, with different colors. Obviously, the east was associated with blue, the rising sun, and the west was associated with black, the setting sun. But the north they associated with orange. principally because at this time of year, the orange monarch butterflies returned. And so for the Day of the Dead, if you look at pictures of it, you're going to see lots of orange colors. In fact, the primary flower for the Day of the Dead is something called the cempasúchil, which is what looks like a giant chrysanthemum that's bright, bright orange. And that was to help the souls of their dead ancestors find their way back to the cemeteries. Now, this is not celebrated equally in every household in every region of Mexico. For instance, if you live in the city, you probably don't go sit in a cemetery because it's just not a common part of, it's not common to see a cemetery in the middle of the city. If you live out in the rural country, however, your family will probably go into the cemetery and sit down at the tomb of your dead ancestors throughout the night. You'll prepare some of their favorite foods, their favorite drinks, light some candle or burn some incense, and you'll sit there through the night to show that they are being remembered still in your family. The most common place, or the quintessential or most important city in Mexico in which this is celebrated, is the city of Janitzio. Janitzio is in the middle of an island called the Isla de Janitzio, in the middle of a lake called Lago Pátzcuaro, in the state of Michoacán. And people from all over Mexico will come to Janitzio to see how they celebrate Day of the Dead, because it is the most traditional way in which it is celebrated.
You have been listening to a production of the Minnesota Alliance for Geographic Education. Background music is courtesy of Jim Hogue of Decorah, Iowa. The Minnesota Alliance is a non-profit group of educators and other parties who are interested in promoting an enhanced understanding of our world through improved geographic literacy.